Happy Wednesday, fifth grade. This is Miss Gibson coming to you with your reading for today. So, of course, you guys should be on Wednesday, May 20th, 2020, for your reading virtual packet. You guys should also have chapter 11 out because that's the new chapter that we will be getting in for But Not Buddy. And then, of course, the the stop and jots and exit ticket for today. So, this should be on Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. All right. So let's get into the text so you guys can begin the lesson for today. All right. As we begin the lesson today, we will be focusing on how we can track our main character, which is Bud, how he develops and grows over the course of the novel, and how we can view how the chronological events of the plot help support Bud's thoughts and reflections. So, this chapter is basically going to be building on what Bud's thoughts and reflections have been from the beginning of the chapter until now, which is chapter 11, and how this is going to reflect his new actions and the thoughts that come about in this chapter. Now, what you guys will be doing to start off is beginning with reading pages 65 through 69 on your own. And then you guys will be getting into the stop and jot of showing your understanding of how the chapters are continuing to build on top of each other when it comes to Bud's idea of realizing who Herman E. Calloway is to him in his life. All right. So again, we already know that Bud was already trying to figure out who Herman E. Calloway is, and he thinks it's his father. So this is the chapter where we will figure out who he is in his life and how the idea of him has begun to continue to blossom and flourish in this point. So this is connecting to the teaching point of understanding how the character's thoughts and reflections continue to grow in the text from chronological events and shows the character's developments as well. So we will be looking at how Bud is growing as a character and also how his thoughts and everything have begun to continue to grow based off of the events that have been happening in his life. All right. So you guys again will be reading pages 65 to 69. And then you'll be getting into the first stop and jot of answering explain how the conversation and the idea of Herman E. Calloway continues to blossom in Bud's mind. So again, you are beginning with 65, so the beginning of chapter 11, to the bottom of page 69. All right, so you guys will be ending here with my eyes get real heavy. So this is where you guys will stop, and then after that, you will be getting into the first stop and jot again of explaining how the conversation and the idea of Herman E. Calloway continues to blossom in Bud's mind, based off of what you guys are learning from what we are reading in chapter 11. So go ahead and pause the video and get started for today's reading. All right, so welcome back from answering the first stop and jot of explain how the conversation and the idea of Herman E. Calloway continues to blossom in Bud's mind. So we already know that Bud is thinking that Herman E. Calloway is his father based off of the flyers that he has from his mom and how he initially had that idea of him being his father planted in his head. So now we're going to move on to chapter 11, where he is basically continuing on with this idea that Herman E. Calloway is his father. So he is in the car with Mr. Lefty Lewis, and Lefty Lewis is basically asking him about his dad, and we are going to get into this on the bottom of page 66, where it says, "So you stay with your daddy?" He goes, "Yes, sir." Right in Grand Rapids? "Yes, sir." "What's his name? Does he work for the railroad?" And then Bud proceeds to say, "No, sir." The seed started sticking its head out further and further. So this is where the idea of that seed being planted becoming something bigger than what it was. So this is Bud clearly having that seed of Herman E. Calloway being his father, being planted even more into a bigger idea of him. And then Bud continues to say, "His name is Herman E. Calloway, and he plays the biggest doggone fiddle you'll ever see." The man shouted, "What?" I said, "Really, sir, I swear for God, it's the biggest fiddle in the world." He said, I know your father. Everybody in Grand Rapids does. I didn't say anything. So this is the again building on the fact that Hermione Calloway is somebody that's still existing and still is real. And then it goes into that idea of Bud thinking that Hermione Calloway is his father. And then it goes on to say, well, at first glimpse, I wouldn't say you look that much like Herman, but now that I look at you, I suppose you do. Of course, he's quite a bit bigger, if you know what I mean. This was the best news I'd had all day. My face nearly split in half against my giant smile. Yes, sir, folks say I'm the spitting image of my old man. So this is where that idea continues to blossom based off of this conversation that he's having with Lefty Lewis. And then, of course, trying to figure out where Herman E. Calloway is and how they are connected in real life. So this is how and where this conversation happens and gets into this second stop of job explaining how that conversation and the idea of Herman E. Calloway continues to blossom in Bud's mind. So this is where it happens. He continues to talk about him. He continues to figure out that they look alike. They may look alike. He knows things about him and what he does in real life. And this is why that he is connected to Herman E. Calloway right now. All right. So we're going to read page 70 to page 72 together, and we're going to stop after the paragraph ending with I've got a nice breakfast waiting for you. So take your text and get it to the top of page 70 so we can begin reading together. Okay. Wow. I must have been real tired walking and ducking in and out of the bushes between Flint and Owasso was a lot more work than I thought it was. Most of the time since Mama died, if someone even walks close to where I'm sleeping, I'm up in a flash. My eyes fly open and I'm looking right at them. At one of the foster houses where I stayed, a woman told me she knew I was going to be a criminal because anyone who sleeps that late has got to have a guilty conscience. Anyone who sleeps most of the time the sound of someone else sorry, most of the time the sound of someone else going from sleep breathing to awake breathing in the same room as me is enough to get me up. But this morning, I felt like I was at the bottom of a well that someone had filled with tons of thick chocolate pudding. Someone was calling my name from way up at the top of the well. She was saying, Bud, Bud, Bud. Waves from the pudding were slogging me back and forth, back and forth. Bud, wake up, Bud. It was a woman's voice, and her hands were trying to shake me awake. Uh oh, this is number 29 of my rules. Rules and things 29. When you wake up and don't know for sure in and there's a bunch of people standing around you, it's best to pretend you're still asleep so you can figure out what's going on and what you should do. I kept my eyes closed, acting like I was out cold. The woman said, Papa, what on earth are all these lumps and bites on this baby's face? A man answered, Well, he was walking all the way from Grand Rapids to Flint. It looks like he provided a pretty paltry meal for every mosquito on the way. The woman said, This poor child must be dead. I hate getting him up. I wish he could stay with us for a while. At least he's had his sleep. Then I remember who I was with because Lefty Lewis said, I know, but I've got to get back. He can sleep in the car on the way back to Grand Rapids. The woman rolled back the blanket they'd put over me and said, Papa, look at his legs. This boy's as skinny as a rail. Shucks, they'd taken off my knickers when they put me in this bed. Now I was going to have to pretend I was asleep even longer, at least until I could figure a way out of being so embarrassed. Lefty Lewis said, Yeah, he's puny. Good thing his legs don't touch when he walks, because if those two twigs got to rubbing against one another, he'd have a fire going in no time. The woman said, That's not funny. He doesn't look like he's been fed right. Now, who's his father again? You said you know him? Everyone in Grand Rapids does. I'm surprised you can't remember him. He's quite a big fish here. See, I told you it was smart to pretend you were asleep some of the time. Now I was going to learn some things about my father. The woman said, "What kind of man is he that he let his child be so thin? And look at the condition of the boy's clothes. Everything is either too small for him or almost in tatters. Where is this child's mother? There's not much of a woman's touch about him." Lefty Lewis said, "It seems to me that Mrs. Calloway I knew passed a long time ago. The boy says he's 10, and I'm sure she died quite a while before that. But you know how musicians are. There must be at least a few Mrs. Callaways I don't know anything about." That meant that my dad was married to someone before he married my mom. Lefty Lewis's daughter said, "Well, I think it's a sin. I'm of half a mind to keep this boy for a while to put some fear in his daddy's heart, but he probably wouldn't even miss him." Lefty Lewis said, "Now you stop being so judgmental. Herman's got a reputation for being no nonsense, not mean. Does this child have any brothers or sisters?" "I believe he's got a sister, but she'd have to be his half sister. She must be full grown by now." The woman pulled the blanket over my legs and shook me again. I was glad I could stop pretending I was asleep. I was sick and tired of hearing about how skinny I am and what a mixed up family I come from. She said, real soft, "Bud, wake up. Come on, sweetie. I've got a nice breakfast waiting for you." Okay, now, based on the text that we just read together, what is the reason behind Bud being fake asleep? Right. Bud is going to fake being asleep because he is trying to get more information out of the people that are talking around him. So he has this rule where it says, when you wake up and don't know for sure where you're and there's a bunch of people standing around you. It's best to pretend you are still asleep until you can figure out what's going on and what you should do. So he's basically forcing himself to stay asleep as he's hearing this conversation that Lefty Lewis and his daughter is having, just so he could figure out more things that are going on about Herman E. Calloway. So realize why he's forcing himself to stay asleep in this moment and what he's getting away from this. So, what are some things that he's gotten away from in this conversation? Correct. So there are things that his father may be older than what he thinks. There could be other Mrs. Callaways, so he could probably have more sisters or brothers or siblings out in the world right now that he doesn't know about. And he also doesn't think that his daddy doesn't want him based off of what they're talking about. So that's what we are getting from this conversation. And then after that, you guys are going to get into the remaining part of the chapter. So we stopped on page 72 after the paragraph that says, I've got a nice breakfast waiting for you. So this is where we stopped on page 72. Your job now is to read the rest of the page 72 until the bottom of 75 before the red text independently. So I'm going to show you where this is at. So you're going to read the rest of 72, 73, 74, 75. And you're going to stop right here where it says Kim sang. All right. As you are reading, you are going to track the comparison between how Bud feels about lying to adults versus lying to children. Okay. So this is again like in previous chapters we've learned why Bud lies to adults based off of the rules for himself. So this stop and drop connects to the teaching point of understanding of how chronological events help support the thoughts and reflections of a main character. So now we are going to see how events in the past are now building on top of each other in this moment based off of how Bud decides to use his tactics and lies and survival skills when he is lying to adults versus how he is talking to other kids potentially his age. So in this moment, you guys will be getting into again page 72 to the bottom of page 75 and stopping. And then you are going to answer the second stop and jot of compare and contrast how Bud feels about lying to adults versus kids. All right. So again, you are stopping right here at the bottom of page 75, and then you are going to get into the second stop and jot for this text. When you are done, you are going to come back and come to the discussion before we talk about what you're going to be doing for homework and exit ticket. And of course, discussing this stop and jot too. Go ahead and pause the video and get started. All right, so welcome back from answering stop and jot number 2, which is compare and contrasting how Bud feels about lying to adults versus kids. So as you guys read in the remaining text from the bottom of page 72 to 75, he is now getting into this conversation with Lefty Lewis's family. So he's talking to the kids, the mom, the grandkids, etc., as he is there eating breakfast. So it says in the text here that as they were talking and the kids were beginning to ask Bud questions, he had to say, I had to stop and think. It's one thing to lie to a grown up. Most times, adults want to hear something that lets them take their attention off you and put it on something else. That makes it easy and not too bad to lie to them. You're really just giving them what they want. So clearly, when he thinks about lying to adults, it's just to please them in this place and not to really give them the ultimate truth. But in regards to kids, it says he then follows up with, it's different when you lie to another kid. Most times, kids really do want to know what they're asking you. So Bud is going on to answer some of these questions about what the kids are asking them, but trying to say, like, that wasn't a lie, or that's what his thoughts are as he's answering them, to make it seem like in his head that as he's answering these children or other kids, that it's not a lie that he's saying to them, but it could have been a lie to what he was saying to the parents. So it begins to say, I guess I've been thinking too long because he said, you run all the way from Grand Rapids to Owasso. Was it because your daddy used to beat you? I could answer that with the swear for God truth. Shucks, my daddy never laid a hand on me in his life. So clearly, this is a truthful response because he never met his father. So, of course, the father never hit him or anything about what he done. And then the children then ask, then how come you run? And then he goes, I didn't like where I was. And that wasn't a lie, because if we think about where he was prior to him being on the run, he was with the A Moses in a shed, getting bit up by a whole bunch of bugs, and then having to run out of the shed and be on a survival tactic. And then, of course, getting into the place where he's again surviving again, where he's in Hooverville and in a place where it's just a whole bunch of homeless people. So he's realizing that he's not really trying to tell the full truth, but he is trying to tell something that's not a lie to kids, because it's different to lie to kids than it is to the parents. So now that we're done with the bottom of page 75, we are going to stop right there. Okay. So you guys are now going to get into your exit ticket for today. Your code for today is lavender. I'm going to spell it out right here. So Lavender. So once you guys are done again with those stop and jots in this video, you guys are going to get into that exit ticket and making sure that you guys are answering the code for lavender and then answering the exit ticket. Again, make sure you guys are using the text for the pages of today. So we read today 65 to the bottom of page 75. So make sure you guys are using that text to help you out with the answers for today. There should be no confusion. You guys should always be going back to the text and making sure you are using it to help you out to answer these questions, because they are directly from the text. All right. Then for homework, you guys will be reading pages 75 to 79. So you guys will be finishing chapter 11 for homework before Friday's lesson. So make sure you guys are finishing this homework. And then, of course, you guys are going to have a little beginning, as you can say, Stop and Jot / exit ticket with the secret code that is coming from these pages that you guys are reading in order to progress in the new lesson for Friday. So make sure you guys are getting into that and doing your homework correctly. Other than that, go into that exit ticket, make sure you're using this text, and good job on figuring out how chapters are continuing to build on each other for today and continuing to figure out Bud's thoughts and actions and reflections as a main character. So go ahead and get into that exit ticket. Have a good Wednesday.